This is a humorous and adventurous story of a naughty monkey called Toto. The writer's father brought this monkey from a Tonga driver for 5 rupees. The Tonga driver used to keep the little red monkey tied to a feeding trough, and the monkey looked so out of place that grandfather decided that he would add the little fellow to his private zoo, and therefore he was purchased from the Tonga driver. The writer's grandfather purchased a monkey and named it Toto. Toto was a pretty mischievous monkey. His bright eyes twinkled with mischief, and often displayed with a beautiful smile on his face. But his hands looked dry as though they had been pickled in the sun for many years, so he had a lot of wrinkles on his hands. Yet his fingers were quick and wicked. Wicked because very cunningly he used to do a lot of things. And his tail, while adding to his good looks, also served as a third hand. So it was obvious that he used to catch many things with his hands, but his tail was also handy. That is, he could do many things, maybe hang around on a tree and do many other things with his hands. He could use it to hang from a branch, and it was capable of scooping out any delicacies that might be out of reach of his hand. The grandmother always fussed and created a lot of problems when grandfather brought home some bird or an animal. So it was decided that Toto's present should be kept a secret from her until she was in a particular good mood. Grandfather and I, that is the narrator, put him away in a little closet opening into my bedroom wall, where he was tied securely, or so we thought, to a peg fastened into the wall. So they kept him fastened to a wall. A few hours later, when grandfather and I came back to release Toto, we found that the walls, which had been covered with some ornamental paper chosen by grandfather, now stood out as naked brick and plaster. So this monkey pulled out the plaster and it was naked. The peg in the wall had been wrenched from its socket, and my school brazier, which had been hanging there, was in shreds. So obviously the monkey did the mischief. He pulled off the peg, and the socket was out of its place, and the school blazer was in tatters. I wondered what grandmother would say, but grandfather did not worry. He seemed pleased with Toto's performance. Maybe he was making it sure that Toto was like a common monkey or a normal monkey which did a lot of mischief. Toto's presence in the house was still kept a secret because nobody wanted that grandmother should come to know about Toto. So Toto was now transferred to a big cage in a servant's quarter where a number of grandfather's pets lived very sociably together. So we can say that it was just a mini zoo. A tortoise, a pair of rabbits, a tame squirrel, and for a while my pet goat. So the author also had his pet goat there in a mini zoo. But the monkey would not allow any of his companions sleep at night, so it was creating a lot of problems at night. So grandfather, who had to leave for Dehradun next day to collect his pension in Jharkhand, decided to take Toto also along with him. Now, unfortunately, I could not accompany grandfather on that trip, but he told me about it afterwards. Now, here the narrator could not go with his grandfather, but the whole incident, what happened during the journey, was narrated to the narrator. A big black canvas kit bag was provided for Toto, so Toto has to sit inside that bag. This with some straw at the bottom. When the bag was closed, there was no escape. Toto could not get his hands through the opening, and the canvas was too strong for him to bite his way through. So the full precaution was made so that the monkey, the Toto, he does not come out of the bag. His efforts to come out only had the effect of making the bag roll about on the floor or occasionally jump into the air, an exhibition that attracted a curious crowd of onlookers on Dehradun railway platform. So everybody was just trying to find out what was going inside that bag, because the bag was moving very mysteriously and they just wanted to find out. Toto remained in the bag as far as Saharanpur, but while grandfather father was producing his ticket at the railway turnstile, Toto suddenly poked his head out of the bag and gave the ticket collector a wide grin. So the poor man was taken aback. So the ticket collector was completely taken aback because he was surprised to find an animal inside a bag. But with great presence of mind and much to grandfather's annoyance, he said, "Sir, you have a dog with you. You'll have to pay it for it accordingly." In vain did grandfather take Toto out of the bag. In vain did he try to prove that a monkey did not qualify as a dog or even as a quadruped. Toto was classified a dog by the ticket collector because maybe there was no other provision to carry a monkey and to pay for that. Then grandfather, just to get his out bag, took from his pocket our pet tortoise and said, "What must I pay for this, since you charge for all the animals?" The ticket collector looked closely at the tortoise, prodded it with his forefingers, and gave grandfather a pleased and triumphant look and said, "No charge. It is not a dog." So obviously maybe bigger animals were charged at the time, and so the ticket collector did not charge anything for the tortoise. When Toto was finally accepted by the grandmother, he was given a comfortable home in the stable, where he had for a companion the family donkey Nana. On Toto's first night in the stable, grandfather paid him a visit to see if it was comfortable. So a grandfather went to the stable where all the animals were kept, and he wanted to make sure that even Toto was comfortable and having a good place there. To his surprise, he found Nana, without apparent cause, pulling at her halter and trying to keep her head as far as possible from the bundle of hay. Nana Grandfather gave Nana a slap across her haunches, and she jerked back, dragging Toto with her. He had fastened on to her long ears with his sharp little teeth. Toto and Nana never became friends. So obviously, when both of are treating each other as strangers, they won't become friends. A great treat for Toto was during the winter season, when he was provided with a very big large bowl by grandmother. A large kitchen kettle had been left on the fire to boil for tea, and Toto, finding himself with nothing better to do, decided to remove the lid. Now, obviously, Toto was a very inquisitive monkey, and he used to probe and pry into anything that he found around himself. Finding the water just warm enough for a bath, he got in with his head sticking out from the open kettle. This was just fine for a while, until the water began to boil. Toto then raised himself a little, but finding it cold outside, sat down again. He continued hopping up and down for some time, until grandmother arrived and hauled him out, half boiled, out of the kettle. Now, so this monkey was really mischievous, and there should be somebody around to handle him. If there is a part of the brain especially devoted to mischief, that part was largely developed to Toto. So he was a mischievous monkey, with all the credit going to his brain. He was always tearing things to pieces. Whenever one of my aunts came near him, he made every effort to get hold of her dress and tear a hole inside the dress she was wearing. One day at lunchtime, a large dish of pulao stood in the center of the dining table. We entered the room to find Toto stuffing himself with rice. My grandmother screamed, and Toto threw a plate at her. One of my aunts rushed forward and received a glass of water in the face. When grandfather arrived, Toto picked up the dish of pulao and made his exit through a window. We found him in the branches of jackfruit, the dish still in his arms. He remained there all afternoon, eating slowly through the rice, determined on finishing every grain that he could have on. And then, in order to spit grandmother, who had screamed at him, he threw the dish down from the tree and chattered and broke that into hundreds of thousands of Now, obviously, Toto was not the sort of pet that we could keep him for long at home. Even grandfather realized that. The narrator was fed up with the monkey because he was doing a lot of mischief all around the place. He was either breaking dishes, tearing clothes, pulling down the curtains, wallpapers pulled out. So he was not the sort of pet that can be handled at home. So they decided to send Toto back to the Tonga driver. So grandfather found the Tonga driver and sold Toto back to him. So it was just a Herculean task to manage Toto at home, and finally they sold him back for 3 rupees. The story, The Adventures of Toto, has a beautiful theme. The theme of the story shows the relationship between man and animal. It shows that all animals cannot be confined at home or they cannot be bonded down. It requires a great deal of patience and skill to train animals. The most important thing is patience and love. But here, in the case of Toto, training was not sufficient because that animal was born for the wild. In this story, we also see that grandfather is nature loving and patient, and he tolerated Toto to a far extent.